It is a scam when you don't allow everyone to operate on fair terms.
We are the Robin Hoods of sports betting. We take something back from the rich bookies and enable our customers to beat them instead.
Welcome to the first UFC betting show. We will be trying to do this every week. There's a UFC card on, so yeah, hopefully can be pretty consistent with this and give you guys a little bit of a show before the weekend's card. So normally the cards will be on Sunday morning for Australians, so try and work that out if you're watching from somewhere else in the world. So yeah, I'll be going through about 6 or 7 fights today. Unfortunately, the weekend's card, which is the first card of 2022, has been heavily affected by COVID. Probably the most affected card so far due to COVID in the past 2 years. So there's been a lot of cancelled fights and a lot of rearranged fights. So different opponents and stuff coming in at late notice. So unfortunately I can't give you insight into all the fights, but I'll just give you the ones that I know are definitely on and aren't in doubt. And yeah, hopefully give you guys some bets, but I will be a little bit coy on some of the stuff just because I don't want to be unfair to the people who pay for a subscription and get all the bets there. So I'll only give 1 or 2 bets out today, but I'll be giving insight into all the fights, so you guys can make your own mind up from there. All the odds will be with Top Sport, so I will get them up soon. But first, kick things off. These are in no particular order, really. It's pretty hard to know the order at the moment because a lot of these fights might not even happen, so this will be a pretty random order. But the first one I was going to go through is Jamie Pickett and Joseph Holmes. Anytime you guys have any questions or anything like that, please send them through, and I'll try and get to them. First one here is Jamie Pickett and Joseph Holmes. I think this is quite an interesting fight because you've got Joseph Holmes, it's his first ever fight in the UFC. He was on the Contender Series, I believe, only recently, and he didn't get a contract from the Contender Series, but then went on to fight Patty about a month later and got a contract straight away, and that was on Looking for a Fight, interestingly enough. And I thought in the 2 fights that I've seen against Barnes and Diggs, and he's actually fought 3 times in the last 4 or 5. No, yeah, he's fought 3 times in between August and November, so he's been very, very active. I thought he looked okay against Barnes and Diggs. I didn't think either of those opponents, especially Diggs, I didn't really rate them too much. And I wasn't too impressed with his stand-up. I thought he still looked a little bit uncomfortable, still trying to use his reach, that he'll have an advantage there over most people. But I thought in the Patty fight, like, he looked a lot better, which was it was quite surprising actually, because it was only 1 month later that he was looking a lot better. So I was really impressed with his stand-up there. So looking at that fight, how much do you take away from that fight versus the other 2 fights before that in the last couple of months? It's hard to tell, but overall, his striking looked a lot better against Patty. His wrestling's okay. His ground game looks okay. I wouldn't say he's like excellent in any area, but I mean, neither is Jamie Pickett. And this is where it kind of gets a bit interesting in terms of the betting, because I just think Pickett is one of the most disappointing fighters I've ever had to watch, because he has all the physical attributes to be an incredible middleweight. He's got a ridiculous reach. He's tall, athletic. He has everything in his back pocket to become an excellent fighter. but he's just, I think it's most of it is just mental for him. He just doesn't pull the trigger in a lot of cases. He looks so unsure of himself. I mean, he spent that last fight against Staropoli up against the cage for such a long time, just being leaned on by Staropoli, and he won a decision there. It was like, I felt like that fight really could have gone either way. He just doesn't impress me at all. So, I mean, if you were going to make me have a bet, I'll just get the odds up here. If you were going to make me have a bet, I'd probably be leaning more towards Pickett at 218 there. But I couldn't be putting my money on Pickett just because I just think he's I just think he's such a disappointing. You just don't know where he's at mentally. Like, if he shows up mentally, believes in himself, he's going to take it to a younger fighter, more inexperienced fighter. Then Jamie Pickett, on the basis that he comes into his best, then 218 is a great bet. But I don't reckon he's ever performed to his potential. So yeah, Holmes debut, he's probably going to want it more, but he's on debut. He's still very green in a lot of areas. So for me, it's a very tricky fight. Looking at some of the prop markets, if I was going to back Pickett, maybe be leaning more towards a decision because he's never really had that killer instinct. If you're going to back Joseph, I'd more so be leaning towards KO or Deck, just because I can't really see. He's got a lot of subs on his record, but I can't see him being able to maybe take Pickett down and work for a sub from there. I think he's more likely to get a knockout than a sub. So, I mean, there's some things you guys can think about, but I think it's best to move on because this, it's a bit of a strange fight and a hard one to call because you've got a rookie up against a guy who's never really fulfilled his potential. Dakota Bush versus Viacheslav Borshchev. I probably botched that second name up massively, so I'll just call him Slav. This is a very, very exciting fight. I love this Slav fella. He's great. His striking is so aggressive, so technical, so smooth, sharp, all of the above. He's probably one of the best strikers in the lightweight division. All of his fights are just so exciting. And he's one of those guys that, if you stand on the feet with him for too long, you're inevitably going to be finished, or, maybe he's going to get himself knocked out too, just from being too aggressive. But overall, against Dakota Bush, I mean, Dakota's decent on the feet. He's pretty unorthodox. He's quite aggressive himself. He's quite explosive and powerful, but he is a bit wild at times. He can be open to being hit, but he is very unpredictable. So take with that what you will, but against a guy like Slav, who's got over 300 kickboxing fights, it's hard to see how it doesn't end up with Slav ending it on the feet, or at least just dominating him on the feet. So I assume Bush will just try and work for a takedown here. And I think maybe early on his wrestling might be successful, but Slav's no slouch in those areas. I think he'll make him work for everything. And yeah, maybe Bush might be able to get him down early. Maybe he might be able to keep him there for a while. I wouldn't back that really. But I think inevitably it's just going to end up on the feet for most of the fight. And as long as it's on the feet, it's a big, big danger for Bush. So unfortunately, TopSport haven't released any other prop markets other than the money line here. I do think the odds at the moment, you've got 152 for Borshchev. I think that'll actually shorten a little bit more. I think he might close it around 140, 145, something like that. So I think there's a little bit of value there. But yeah, maybe be looking out for the KO line when that comes out for Borshchev. I think overall it's his most likely way he's going to win the fight. So see how that pans out. Next one, Court McGee and Ramiz Brahimaj. Interesting fight, this one. I think on the feet it'll be quite even. Ramiz is more dangerous in terms of he's probably got a bit more power. Maybe a little less versatile. We haven't seen all too much of him on the feet except for that fight against Griffin where he got pieced up a little bit towards the end of the fight. But in that first round against Griffin, he kind of hung in there. Landed a few good combos here and there. Nothing significant, though, that's going to blow your hair back. So I do think, against Court McGee, it's going to be pretty even on the feet. But Griffin, Ramiz's fight against Griffin was actually well over a year ago now, or maybe it was just a year ago. So I'm sure at his age he's made some improvements in the striking department. So I'm kind of looking at this as I would make Ramiz favourite if he has made improvements. Always hard to tell, but you would assume someone at that age has made some decent improvements, in the last 12 months. And if he has, then he's definitely worthy of being favourite. And he's also just more dangerous in general. He's more chance of getting a finish. McGee, he might try and wrestle, but I don't see like a huge advantage there for Court. Maybe later in the fight if Ramiz's gas tank doesn't hold up very well. What else have I got on this one? And yeah, if it does go to the ground, that's the thing. Ramiz has looked pretty sharp on the ground, so I'm not even sure McGee will want to go there. I mean, McGee versus Condit, McGee just stood on the feet with Condit, who's obviously not the striker he used to be, but still a lot better than McGee on the feet, and he was pretty comfortable with standing on the feet there. So I think this mostly just plays out on the feet. As I said, maybe Brahimaj, the slightest of faves, is basically a pick 'em. But because McGee doesn't really have any, I don't know, the last time McGee got a finish, he's never really been much of a finisher. Let's not look that up. It might take me a bit of time. But I'll get the odds up here. The props are up for this one. But I would say the bet I like here, and I'm happy to give this one away for people, is Court McGee via decision at 280. I just think I've got this price basically as a pick 'em. So at worst, McGee's maybe values around 2.05. And to get him at decision at 280, I think is a big enough jump up for me to take him on at that price. Just because I don't think he's going to submit Ramiz. The only way I can see him getting a finish is if Ramiz gasses, like crazy gasses. And I don't really see big problems for Brahimaj in that area. So I'd be very surprised if it got to that point where he gassed and McGee kind of took over. So he doesn't have really any KO power. Doubt he submits Brahimaj, who's very skilled on the ground. So if I'm going to back McGee, 280 looks great to me. I'd be happy to take that. Although I'd probably have it priced somewhere around 250. So I think that's a bet I'm happy to give out for everyone here. This is an interesting one too. Decision no bet. I've only just seen the odds, so I might want to have a bigger think about this one. But if you did want to get with Ramiz, I think this might be the way. 175 decision no bet, just because I think he's just got a much better chance of finishing the fight than McGee does. So if it goes to a decision, you get your money back basically. So I think 175, I think that's pretty decent. That might be decent value there. I'd probably want to have a deeper think about that before I completely recommend it. But I'd mostly just, like, if I had to give you one bet, I would go with McGee by decision. All right, next fight. Bill Algeo versus Joanderson Brito. Now, I don't even know if this fight's going ahead, so I'll keep it really brief because Brito may have COVID. Brito's pretty crazy, very aggressive with his striking, and, you know, obviously very open to be hit. But, yeah, Algeo's kind of another one not similar to Pickett, but just hasn't really impressed me all that much in his UFC career so far. I'll just get up some of my notes on Bill Algeo. He's got that kind of karate style, uses his reach pretty well, hasn't got much power. He's kind of like a very poor man Stephen Thompson is what I would say. Like, he's got a lot of work to do in the stand-up, but, I mean, it's probably his best part of his game. He's been taken down by everyone he's fought. I only thought he beat Spike Carlisle just because Carlisle gassed, and I mean, Carlisle. Yeah, I just don't really rate Algeo all that much. I think I think if he loses this fight, he might be on the cusp of being cut from the UFC. Yeah, he looks okay on the ground. He got stuck on his back a lot for periods of the fight. He didn't get stuck on his back for too long against Ramiz. His cardio's okay. But then you go to Joanderson, and he's just ultra aggressive, isn't he? Wild, explosive, powerful. I think how this will play out is Joanderson will be able to get him to the ground early in the fight, and it's just how much is Algeo going to make him work from down there? If he just lets him sit on top, I think he'll either get finished down there, or, you know, he'll just grind out a decision where he takes him down and either beats him up or just lays him praise. But I do have Brito as the favourite in this one. I think the odds are just about right at the moment. I think Algeo really just has to hope that he can make Brito work enough so that he gasses. Make him expend his energy early, try and miss his big shots, and hopefully Brito gets tired. Bets for this one. As I said, I think the money line's just about right. Decision no bet's an interesting one because I do think Brito has a decent chance of getting this done. The only reason Algeo I think is that low is because he might finish Brito late if it goes that long, just because Brito could gas. So yeah, I'll go easy on that one. Just looking at some of these other markets now. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. Maybe Brito to get the finish, KO or sub is okay, but there's nothing really here that stands out. So I think I won't recommend anything here. Brandon Royval versus Rogerio Bontorin. I think this is probably, if not the best fight on the card, the second best fight on the card. Royval is just, he's must-see TV. He's just, if you've never watched the UFC fight before, you don't watch too much, make sure you tune in for him. He's a superb watch. He's just all action. I think on the feet he'll be too much for Bontorin, especially later in the fight. I think there's a big difference in their in the cardio levels between this fight. I think Royval can keep a pace that Bontorin will not be able to handle past 2 rounds, maybe even 1.5 rounds. But on the feet, Bontorin he probably has a power advantage. And I think, Royval he's always open to be hit very hard. He's kind of very hard and very easy at the same time, just because he's so unorthodox, you can't really get a read on him. But at the same time, he's so open that, you probably can land something. The thing I'm sure Bontorin will throw some big punches, but if I was Bontorin, I'd be just trying to get him down as soon as possible, because Royval has shown that he can be susceptible to submissions. So I think Bontorin will be trying to get this to the ground, and I think he has an advantage there. Royval, he'll always be making him work. So I think Bontorin's open for a submission in the first round or two. But past that, I just see Bontorin gassing out and Royval finishing him maybe late in the fight. I mean, Royval can really finish him at any point in the fight. So yeah, for me, Royval inside the distance is one way to look at it. Bontorin inside the distance is another way to look at it, which kind of leads to whether it goes the distance or not. And I haven't actually looked at this market at Top Sport. Yeah, so no, for the fight to go the distance at 146. Might just be a bit short for that. But I think if we're looking at some of the double chance markets, Bontorin via KO or sub, don't think that's too bad. Royval sub or KO or sub at 209, maybe just a little bit short for me. Decision, no bet. I think this is an interesting one because I think Bontorin can get a finish early. So 266, it's not the worst, but it's another one of those where, isn't it? If it goes, it's hard to see this fight going to a decision because Royval's so mad. I guess what I'd be looking at here is, I think Royval KO is not too bad. Nothing that screams out to me really. I think the one I like the most is Rogerio Bontorin by sub, and I think his only real chance of getting a sub might be early on when he's fresh. So you can also then start to look at where are we? Yeah, so Bontorin via round 1 sub at 12. Those kind of ones I like a bit. Hopefully. I think Bontorin sub just overall is probably the best play on this one. So I'm happy to recommend that. I'd take that at 6s. You might be able to get better elsewhere. But yeah, that's a bet I'm happy to take. Chookagian Maia, not very exciting in this one just because it's the second time they fought. And I kind of think it might just go the exact same way, with Chookagian picking her apart from distance with her reach and outpointing her on the feet. I haven't seen enough improvement in Maia's striking to see anything different from Maia in terms of being able to trouble Chookagian on the fight. She just has to try and grapple her and see what she can do. But even if she gets Katlyn to the ground, I mean, she's pretty slick from her back too, and I think she'll just find a way to get back up. So, yeah, it's not a very exciting fight, this one. I do think... I'm not sure if... Yeah, Chookagian at 1.48. There might be the slightest bit of value there. I'm just trying to look at... Yeah, maybe not, actually. But you should be able to get better elsewhere than 148. I do think she'll close it, maybe even shorter than 148. But yeah, I kind of just see it going the exact same way as the first fight. It's really not an exciting encounter for me. And lastly, the main event. Let me have a drink before I get into that one. Isaac McKay says, is this even a real live? Yes, I'm very live, mate. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry, Isaac. Okay. Please elaborate. Calvin Kattar versus Giga Chikadze. You would think this would most likely stay on the feet for the whole fight. Neither is really known for their wrestling or grappling. Giga, obviously a lot more explosive. you would think he has the bigger chance of ending the fight in the early rounds. But as the fight goes on, he does. I noticed in that Barboza fight, just as we got into, I think from memory, I might have even scored Barboza for that second round, or at least it was a lot closer than the first round. And I think it's mostly just because Giga seemed to lose his explosiveness as the fight went on, which makes his kicking game a lot less effective. So I think the later this fight goes, the more Kattar has a much better chance. It's kind of like a boxing versus kicking fight, or kickboxing fight, whatever you want to call it. It'll be a very fun fight. But yeah, I think Giga has a better chance of getting it done in the early rounds. And yeah, as the fight goes on, Kattar, has a much better chance. If I'm Kattar, I guess the way I'm approaching this is I'm trying to tire Giga out as much as possible, especially earlier in the fight. And you want to limit those opportunities where Giga's at range and just blasting body kicks, head kicks, every kick under the sun. So I'd be doing my best if I was Kattar to push him up against the fence, look to work a takedown, maybe just push him up against the fence basically, and try and make this not too ugly, but you know what I mean, just really wear on his gas tank and make sure that, even if you're not winning the round, Giga's getting tired, and you limit the amount of opportunities that he's going to have to explode on you with those kicks. And I think once it gets into the third round, I think this is where Kattar could potentially come into his own. I mean, we saw in that Max fight that he's a tough man. So he's got a decent gas tank, and I think the later this fight goes, especially those later rounds, I can see Kattar giving Chikadze a bit more trouble. I mean, considering Barboza did give Chikadze a lot more trouble in the second round, I mean, I would say Kattar's a better fighter, so I don't see why he couldn't do it, if not better. So, key for Kattar is getting through that first and second round and wearing on him as much as possible, and then implement his slick boxing. And I think this could be a really, really interesting fight. I don't think it's as one-sided as the odds suggest at the moment. They've got Giga as low as 1.43 on TopSport. I would not be taking that. I'd be leaning more towards Kattar at 2.87 there. I think he's definitely the value side at the moment. I guess I think the reason why the odds are this far apart is just because of Kattar's last fight against Holloway and the fact that he just took an absolute beating. But if you just sit back and really break down everything that happened in that fight, when it was, who it was against, it's against arguably the best featherweight in the world. Volkanovski and Holloway are like 1A and 1B of the featherweight division. Holloway, I assume, he's probably in the top pound-for-pound rankings. So he took a beating off, one of the best strikers in the world. And that was a year ago. So it's not like he's fighting a couple of months after taking a beating, or 6 months. He's had a full year to recover. Yes, I'm sure it took a lot out of him, that one fight, but it's not like Kattar's had a crazy career where he's been smashed up or had wars in all of his fights. So I do think everyone's overreacting to that a little bit. Kattar, I think, will feel the effects of that fight later down the line. I think the only thing it might have on him is mentally. But Chikadze is no Max Holloway. He's not going to be able to apply the exact same pressure, output, etc. Completely different fighter. He's a lot more chance of getting a KO finish, even though Kattar has a great chin. But this is a completely different fight, and I don't think the odds are respecting Kattar enough at the moment. But anyway, that wraps it all up. That was the main event there. Hope you guys enjoyed this first UFC betting live show. Yeah, leave any comments. Any questions? I can get to them at some point. Anyone interested in signing up to my service on MMA Punt School, just head over to the Punt School website, or you can just go to the Twitter page at AlexVella_, and you'll find the links all in my bio, and I've got a website too, so you can see all the results on my website. And yeah, but I'll see you guys next week for the big one, the heavyweight title fight card between Ngannou and Gane, which will be a cracker. But thank you very much, guys. Enjoyed that, and see you guys soon.